Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 20th Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit meeting for the Pittsburgh Board of Public Education. We'll begin this evening with any remarks by Ms. Beer that you'd like to make?
Thank you, Mrs. Zuda. I'd just like to bring attention to, on the Committee on Education, there are 8 consultant contracts in front of you. Actually, 7 of those are for Common Core coaches, and 1 is for the equitable participation for special ed. And then I would like to bring to your attention under Committee on Business, under payments authorized, there are renewals for all the insurances for the IU, and under general authorizations, it's the benefits update for the IU.
Thank you, Ms. Beer. Mr. Sumter, we'll start with you and cover any questions you might have on the entire intermediate unit report.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Azuda. No questions at this time.
Ms. Shealy, Mr. Mr. McCray. Mr. Eisler.
No, ma'am.
Dr. Hawley.
I have no questions at this time.
Mrs. Khaleesi. No, ma'am. Mr. Bruntley, we're on the Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit. Okay, thank you, Ms. Beer. We'll move on to the Pittsburgh information. And before we begin, I do have to do one thing. In early May, I attended an event at Pittsburgh-Brashear, and it was Career and College Declaration. It was a ceremony celebrating all the students going to college. And Mr. McCray, I was given something to give to you, but since I was in Cincinnati last month, I couldn't give it to you. But the kids from Langley and Brashear are celebrating unifying their student bodies. And so this is the T-shirt all the kids are wearing. It says United 2012 on the front. And on the back it says, the speed of a Mustang combined with the strength of a bull will conquer all. And so on behalf of the kids at Pittsburgh, Brashear, and Langley, thank you.
Thank them. Don't forget the Southwest Tigers.
Okay. And it was a wonderful event. The kids all got to stand up and say what college they were going to, and they were, it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. Okay, thank you. I did want to do that at legislative, but I wasn't there. We'll begin with the agenda review for the Committee on Education. And Dr. Lippert, do you have anything to share first?
I do. We have a few, 2 items that I need to bring the board's attention to. The first one's actually not on your tabs. It's in the summary information. There's information contained on tab 20 that wasn't copied into the summary. So if you could just go to your summary, and it's page 8 of 19. We're just going to correct the amounts so they're the same in the summary as they are on the actual tabs. And this is the tab renewing the early childhood partners. So everybody on page 8 of 19. Under the section, you'll see there's a large table included on page 8 of 19. In the left-hand side of the column, you have a title called HSSAP, and then another section called PA PKC. That's Pennsylvania Pre-K Counts. The first organization listed under the PA Pre-K Count section is Brightside Academy East Liberty. And if you read across that line, the number of children served there are 14. Total cost per slot is $6,800. The total amount is listed at $95,000. It's actually, if you do the math, it's $95,200. So the 200 is where we needed to correct. And that is correct in the actual board tab, item number 20. The other section I draw your attention to that we do have a replacement tab. It was a placeholder. It's in your folder. You have a yellow folder in front of you. It's item number 52. This is a replacement tab. We're actually amending a contract for the University of New York. This is Pedro Noguero's work. The reason for the amendment is that we're changing the scope of services. The time that's actually the teams working at Perry, and also including in the scope of Dr. Noguero's work, the Westinghouse project, which Dr. Crenshaw, I believe, spoke about at our last education committee. And that ends up with a increase in the total contract amount. And then would you like me to summarize the sections?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so that's pretty good for corrections. Okay, just to highlight what you have in your agenda, in your proposals and grant awards, we are asking you to approve 4 annual grant acceptances. 3 of those are related to special education. 1 is our CTE Perkins grant. As we move into the contracted section, we have 31 contracts. Of interest in this section, we have 7 tabs that are supporting deepening our empowering effective teachers work. The primary focus of these grants are supporting our new career ladder teachers and working with teachers to improve their practice as well as our administrators. And of course, our goal is to get an effective teacher in every classroom every day for every one of our students. Also in the contract section, we also have our Waterfront Learning partner that's recommended to support us in the turnkey model that we talked about at the Education Committee for our Academy online school. We also have 4 early childhood related tabs, including the one that I drew your attention to, which is the renewals for our partner agencies. And we also have 12 tabs that are special education related, and those are predominantly your annual tabs for psychological services and other supports for our special education program for 2012-13. Going into the payments authorized section, we have 8 tabs. They're various, so I'm not going to highlight any of those. And then we move into the general authorization section. There are some specific highlights I'd like to draw your attention to. Item number 44 is a partnership that we're very excited about between the Josh Gibson Foundation and Duquesne University, where they're going to be working with our students in Carrick and Westinghouse in the Business Administration CTE program around a sports management focus. So we're very excited about this. Students who are involved in this can actually get college credit, so it's a very nice link to our CTE programs into college. And Josh is actually here tonight, so I got to meet him. So he's in the other room. Josh, do you want to come up and say hi to the board? I thought it was Josh. They said it was Josh Gibson Foundation. Oh. I hope he's coming.
Well, yes, it's Sean. It's Sean. Josh Gibson is my grandfather, but we're very excited about this program, the curriculum. You know, being in the sports business that I'm involved with, we feel that I think a lot of our kids don't take advantage of the business side of sports. I think a lot of kids focus on being the athlete, and there's so many opportunities for kids and young adults to be involved in the business side of sports. And we want to bring that. To the Pittsburgh Public Schools. I am a product of Pittsburgh Public School. I saw the shirt. I did graduate from Langley High School.
There you go.
And Josh Gibson is also a product of Allegheny and Conroy. So it's very exciting for us to be able to bring this curriculum to the Pittsburgh Public Schools.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, I have a couple more items in this section, general authorization. One of the things that we talked about when we talked about the AP summer program, we said that we'd be bringing a tab forward for an IB summer program. So we're excited to have the IB summer program coming before you tonight. The other tab also related is our continuation of on-site gifted services at 3 of our former pilot schools. So we know that we have 5 gifted pilot schools. The gifted pilot ended this year, and we're asking the board to support on-site gifted service continuation at Colfax grades K through 5, Dilworth, and Grandview. And Fort Pitt and Northview are closing, so that's why we're not bringing that recommendation. The other tab I wanted to highlight is number 47. This is asking the board, based on our education committee, for the actual approval of our online Academy 612. Remember, this is our strategy to be a first choice competitive school district. We believe that the 800 students that are opting into other cyber charters, that if we get them back, we have the Pittsburgh promise, they don't. We're committed to every student in any one of our schools, whether it's online or brick and mortar, to make them promise eligible, 2.5 GPA and 90% attendance, and we think that we can do a better job than where they're actually being served. So this is our first strategy to be competitive and to attract students back to the district. And I wanted to highlight 2 other items of interest. We already talked about the Westinghouse tab, but we do have 2 donations in this section. We have a donation totaling almost $77,000 for our Summer Dreamers. We have 4,800 pirate tickets that are being donated. And we also have an $800 donation to our pre-K program from the AIU that's supporting pre-K transition into kindergarten. So I know that was lengthy, but there are 52 items, so I wanted to do it justice. So thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Thank you very much.
I was just going to say, because we might want to also mention the fact that we do have the change in the school calendar, so, yeah, okay. And we inserted a vacation day, September 17th, which will push both teacher and student days one day later. So that will be, once the board would adopt that change, it will be posted on the website. We'll make sure our families know.
Thank you, Dr. Lippert and Dr. Lane, very much. We will start with the proposals and grants, number 1 through 4 on the green pages. And Mr. Sumter, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. No questions on that section at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. Mr. McCray. Mr. Eisler.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I have 2 questions dealing with 1 and 4. Both are decreases in the amounts of money based on student data. I'm interested in one which is IDEA, which is special education federal dollars. Do we actually have a decrease in the number of special education students in the district?
Yes, we do.
Can you tell us why?
Mary Jane Conley, Executive Director, Special Ed. Yes, we reduced our numbers of our population of special education students to about 18.1%. It was a couple of years ago up to about 22%. I think a lot of that has to do with the curriculum and our movement towards RTI.
Great, thank you, and thank you to your staff for that hard work. I mean, I mouthed 22 whenever you said that, Ms. Conley. On 4, which is Perkins, and having to do with career and technical education, it's a reduction of about 30% from last year based on data, student school data, census data. We have that much of a decrease in students who are taking advantage of career and technical education?
I'm not certain that's how the Perkins funding, it's calculated by the number of families that qualify for free and reduced lunch, I believe. It's the same way title was reduced. I think Pete reviewed that with the board. He can provide more detail, but I don't think it actually has to do with the number of students in our CTE program versus the amount of dollars. Pete, do you want to?
So it's similar to Title I?
It is.
Okay, and Peter,
With
if
the
you
census.
can, I mean, if you don't have it tonight, you can get it to us. There's no rush. It's just an interest in why the decrease. I'm more interested in that it's not a decrease in federal funding per se. It has to do with our data and how it's calculated, correct?
It's a combination related.
Anything you can get is good. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Dr. Hawley.
I have no comments on that section.
Mrs. Fink. No, I'm good. Mrs. Khaleesi. And Mr. Brentley. All righty. We will move on to the consultants and contracted services, numbers 5 through 35. Is that what it is? 5 through 35, the pink pages. Mr. Sumter, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Because there's so many consultant contracts in this section, it just, the idea or thinking, it'd be nice to have a list of all the consultants in the district and what they're doing and how they really tie into the grand scheme of things. And it also goes to the fact that there's a lot of consultant work going on for special education, and to know the effectiveness of that also. The first question I had is on item number 10, and that's the waterfront learning. Service of the AIU 3, its board authorization is requested to enter into a contract with Waterfront Learning, a service of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit 3, a trusted educational provider with a decade of online learning experience. Because we're proposing this now for this fall of 2012-2013 school year, do we have enough time to roll this program out, this new school out?
Mr. Sumter, we do believe what Waterfront typically does for districts, and we have, Mark has visited districts that have done very similar work. Because we're recommending to the board the turnkey model, which means you turn a key in the programs there, so you get a lot of structured support from Waterfront. We're asking Waterfront to provide not only the hardware which is the student laptops, the printers, the connectivity, the actual instructors, as well as the software. We feel very confident that with their support and with Mark's expertise, that we would be able to successfully accept students who would like to enroll for the opening of school.
Could you speak more to the recruitment of students? How are we going to have enough students in the school, or any students in the school for that matter?
Our projected enrollment for next year, we'd like to grow the school to approximately 100 students, 120 students. If you remember from our education committee, we're targeting the rising 5th graders through 9th graders. Why? Because they're the students that are promise eligible. Our recruitment efforts will start as soon as the board actually approves this next week, with outreach efforts via phone calls, visits to parents. We already have a list of all the students that left, as well as what cyber schools they're actually attending. If you remember in our presentation, we talked about sampling some of those parents already. And Mark is working with Lisa's department on actually a marketing brochure and things like that. So we're coming at it from multiple angles.
My concern is still, we're talking about a 2-month time frame to do this. Within 2 months, recruit students, attract students, convince parents, get everybody lined up in 2 months. Whereas some change in Pittsburgh takes years, or I don't have any problem with the company, the plan. It's the recruitment and getting students into the program that I'm concerned with. And we've had changes within school structures within the district with brick and mortar schools. We didn't have it with an online school. And the time it took to just convince folks in certain areas of the city of the changes that were being made within the district to their school, as to what it's going to look like, what it's going to be, attracting students to the school, knocking on doors, etc. So I say that in the sense that, well, it's always prior proper planning prevents pitiful poor performance.
Edit that out.
I've said that for like 20 years, and that's the first time I've blown it in public. But the 7P principle, pitiful poor performance.
Can I take an opportunity to say something? Just to make.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I did want to just remind the board that when you do an online school, you can actually operate a school with 1 student, 2 students, and it's always rolling admissions. So we currently, next week, if you approve this contract, we don't owe Waterfront any money until we get our first student enrolled. So one thing that's a little bit different is that in a brick and mortar school, you can't open it with 1 student. But in terms of online learning, it's much more flexible, and it also is a very transient population. So that's one of the things that's a little bit different than operating a brick and mortar.
That's point well taken. The concern still is we're talking about the number of students we wanted to attract, the overall savings we're looking to achieve, and if we can compete against those that are already in existence to, I think the Pittsburgh Promise is the carrot, obviously, but again, I wish you well to be able to do it within a 2-month time frame, and hoping that it comes out well, but let's make sure we have all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed. We can move on to item number 12, and that's the Center for Civic Leadership, CORO, and the board authorization is requested to renew the contract. Because it says the word renew, my question is a little desensitized, but it's, I guess the general question is, CORO in a position to teach teachers how to lead?
So this is a renewal. The renewal comes because this past year they worked with King and Brashear. We had roughly 30 clinical resident instructors, and they worked with the 2 schools, the CRIs, around specifically community and parent engagement. and also building effective relationships with their colleagues. So one of the things that we've learned working with teacher leaders is one of the most difficult things that they do is actually engage in a peer-to-peer conversation where you have to be really honest about practice. So Coro has been very valuable in those two areas. So getting feedback from the CRIs as we move throughout the year, they felt that it would be a strong partner to support our ITL2s, which we're launching this year, as well as to our continuation of the learning engagement specialists.
I don't want to get, not that I'm trying to say cast a negative light on the situation, but in this section, again, there's a lot of consultants. We see all the blades of grass, but we don't see the whole lawn or how all those blades of grass fit into the lawn, such that we could approve things one by one, but not know the grand scheme of things. And I just get the feeling that there's a lot of consultants hired to do things that I would think some people should already know, and if they don't know, then we're training them to know at this point in time. But they've graduated, they're hired, they're getting paid, but there's a whole, I can understand professional development on new stuff, but professional development on stuff that should be. But then I'll move on because I don't want to dwell on that issue, but just to say that as a side comment. On number 13, that's the Pacific Education Group. It's interesting that they're talking about effective hiring. They want to work with the group to deliver coursework to support the professional development of career ladder teachers. And it goes on to say that more specifically, Pacific Education Group will provide a 6-seminar series for clinical resident instructors focused on collaborative action research for equity. CARE. We're finally training teachers on how to care. That just, the fact that that acronym came out and the fact that that's really the bottom line of teaching, that if those teachers that are effective are those teachers that care. Moving on to number 27. I guess I'm still in the same section. This is another consultant, Central Pittsburgh Psychiatric Services, LLC. We're renewing a contract program for students with exceptionalities, contract at Pittsburgh Oliver, psychiatric evaluations, et cetera. The concern is, what about the Perry students? Will they be included in this, or will this just follow the Oliver students?
Yeah, I'll try to explain this, and Mary Jane, you can get my back, see what a good job you did at prepping me for this. But this is actually to support the McKnocker transition into Oliver, because if you remember, McKnocker isn't licensed. They don't have the occupancy permit to actually provide. So as we actually transition the building needs some support before they take over this service on their own. So this is actually help a successful transition moving from McKnocker into Oliver.
It was confusing by the name.
I think it says renewal.
True, it does say renewal.
That's what made it confusing too.
And it's confusing because it says issues at Pittsburgh Oliver, but it should be McKnocker in the Oliver building. Yeah. Okay. Number 29, 30, they have the number of students there for, this is another program for students with exceptionalities. If they go over the number or under the number, is that going to cause any problems, or do they have to work with the exact number of students?
Mary Jane, do you want 29 and 30?
PLE for number 20, Mary Jane Conley, Executive Director, Special Ed. PLE is one of our approved private schools to whom we refer students who we cannot service within our own school districts because of their critical mental health issues. And they currently have 3. Special Education is working very hard to service all students in our schools, but there may be a possibility of a minimal increase, maybe 1 or 2 students. I don't know that yet. It depends on the students that are in our service in our buildings for the 2012-13 school year. But if that's the case, that's not a problem because we do have funds that we can just transfer over. So that would not be an issue. As far as systems imaging, this is a general amount. It's 50 cents per page. We have not exceeded $12,600. We know that the students for whom we need to provide those services at this point, and this is basically what it costs.
Okay, it was my mistake. I didn't really mean to include 30 in that, but
Oh.
it was more on 29 where they have the exact number of students
Okay.
mentioned. But thanks for
You're
that
welcome.
information also. That's all I have for this section. Thank you very much, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Ms. Shealy?
Thank you. Mr. Sumter actually called out something on number 29 that's not clear to me. Part of it says 3 students and another part says 5. Because of the echo, I think. On number 29, and it's actually in the paragraph, it says for 3 students, and then who will the services benefit? It's for 5 students.
Mary Jane Conley, Executive Director, Special Ed. We currently have only 3 students at PLE. You're reading 5
29.
on 29.
Who will the services benefit?
Oh, I don't have.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the issue is that, because this is a renewal, my guess, Mary Jane, is that the back of the tab wasn't updated in that previously. Previously, we probably served 5 students this previous year, but that number went down to 3 students the next year. The front of the tab got revised, but the back of the tab wasn't picked up.
And I agree with that because there were 2 students that graduated. That's only a program to 6th grade. Okay.
Thank you. And I have a general question that fits between here and business. So if I may, and it's probably for you, Dr. Lippert. There are a lot of renewals, and I think more of them are in the business and finance packet this month, or a lot of them are. And it's not clear to me how or when you evaluate these consultants to decide or determine whether to continue these contracts. Maybe
So-
I'll save it for business because I have specific ones in business. But, yeah. Go ahead, try.
The reason, the instructional resources, in other words, the materials that students use, like First in Math, things of that nature, aren't services that are provided by a person. They're licensing renewals, they're textbook materials. We can go through the list specifically what you have, but those typically are renewals because they're more materials, and instructional materials are not actual people delivering services.
Okay, I'll save those specifics for when we get to that section of tabs, and that's it for me for this section. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. Mr. McCray?
Thank you. On number 24 and 25, this has to do with the one-on-one nursing. I got a very powerful email from a parent. Can I forward that to you, Ms. Conley? Did we all get that? I thought it was just me. But it was a very powerful one about their nurse and how they really cared for them. And maybe we can deal with that. Thank you. That's all I had.
Do you want to address her? I got a copy also,
Okay, we all
which I sent to her, and she responded, and I did not know at that time that everyone had gotten it.
I didn't know either.
So I will forward it to the rest of the board members, and then you can address any questions you have after that. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Eisler?
Thank you, Mrs. Asuda. On item 10, I hear Mr. Sumter's concern. I do, in reading a lot about cyber schools in Pennsylvania and knowing that the legislature is taking a very, very close look at charters and going for some reforms, that it is, as you pointed out, Dr. Lippert, a rolling process, and its students drop out of schools and then enroll in cybers throughout the 9 or 10-month period. So I think the sooner we get it going, the better. Again, I think it's great that Dr. Lane has taken the initiative, and something we've been talking about in this board for a long time when it comes to online education and how we're going to work with it. And I think working with the intermediate unit, which has a proven track record and terms of the cost analysis, is really the most reasonable, is something that's really quite good. And again, I commend the staff for moving on this. I think it's great. The addition of, excuse me, just let me flip here for a minute. I want to go to number 20, which is an early childhood one. And again, something that I think as a board we follow very, very carefully. Although this is a contract renewing for slots that we purchase from other providers, and I'm concerned about how this is based, given the fact that we don't know the final outcome of the budget for next year. It has caused great confusion with some legislators that we are not on a state fiscal year but a calendar year. And again, this is one of those shots we have to make. But is this based on the amount of money we got in the current fiscal budget, which ends on June 30th of this year, or some other way? I'm just trying to determine how we're able to make these judgments now, not knowing what the budget is going to be from the legislature and the governor for early childhood next year.
I'm going to ask Carol Burrow Martin to answer this question.
Carol Barone Martin, Executive Director for Early Childhood Education. This is based on numbers that we verbally received from our liaison with the state. The pre-K counts dollars is what we received this year, but the Head Start Supplemental Assistance Program is a reduction. And it was we haven't received anything formal, but verbally they gave us those numbers.
So this, I mean, I don't want to get into a great deal of detail now. We can do this offline, but this could be a moving target. I mean, the legislature there are some who have the wisdom to understand the importance of early childhood and are really fighting for holding harmless early childhood for the coming year. And there is money being put back into the budget. So I want to make sure on this we're not locking ourselves into a figure which could be lesser than what we could provide students who need these services if, in fact, the legislature sends to the governor a budget which includes more money for early childhood, you know, reaches the same levels as 11, 12. Am I making myself clear?
Yes, you're making yourself clear. With this particular tab that you have in front of you, there is a reduction in the number of partners that we have, and we would come back with a revision if it's something different than the verbal number that they gave us, and we would include more partners.
Great, thank you. So we have the ability to adjust.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. I mean, usually we're adjusting down. Hopefully, we're going to be adjusting up. Just one other comment, and I'll make a comment in the next in another section where the intermediate unit is also providing us a service. But there is another board tab in here where our teachers are going to benefit from some work at the intermediate unit. And again, I think everybody's to be commended on working with the IU Intermediate Unit 3. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Dr. Hawley.
Yes, okay, is it working now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I want to go to number 10 as well. Mr. Campbell, did you actually see the equipment that they would be giving our students?
I have not seen the equipment as of yet. We have a meeting scheduled for the 27th.
27th of this month?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when I look, I did a little research on my own about this company. And basically, the company uses the school districts that you told us about at the Education Committee meeting. They use this program not for all of their students, but as an alternative ed program for some of their students. Is that what's happening there?
I'd have to know which districts you contacted, because they partner with well over 50 school districts, and they partner in all different ways: credit recovery, alternative ed, attracting back students that have opted in, full online service like we're doing. So depending on the school district, Gateway has a full program, Deer Lakes has a full program, and Penn Hills has conversion.
A conversion program.
Yep.
Okay, is there anyone left in the school district that actually looked at the materials or the curriculum to see if it would fit the needs of our students?
Yes, so just a detail that we didn't go into in Education Committee is Waterfront has several different software providers: Compass Learning, E2020, Apex, and we chose out of their offerings, because you could take some courses in Compass if you wanted, some courses in Apex. We actually chose the E2020 suite, and it has over 300 courses. We sat and mapped them into our current course catalog offerings, including AP. So that's the program that most robustly aligns to our graduation requirements, AP offerings, et cetera.
Did you match this particular suite with what the students are already using to see if parents would really choose that program over the program that they're currently using?
One thing, and I'd have to ask Mark, because our audience are the 800 students that are currently out at Agora, PA Cyber, and I'm not certain exactly which academic program they use, if they use E2020. So there's all different software providers that different cyber charters actually use. In terms of alignment to our curriculum, we do actually have the option to not only align courses like 8th grade U.S. history, to have them take a U.S. history course in 8th grade, but we also can actually pick how they go through the modules. Like in math class, you have different progressions you could do. We can move around the modules and say you do this one first, and then you do this lesson and that lesson. So in terms of alignment to the district, we feel really strongly, but in terms of attracting students that might not be used to E2020, they might be used to a virtual experience in like or Apex or K-12. I'm not sure how those programs actually align for a student who might be moving between different software programs.
Did anyone do a survey or ask parents why they left and what would actually attract them back, other than telling them they could get the Pittsburgh Promise dollars?
Yeah, we're actually out. If you want some detail, Mark is here tonight with us, and we did a sampling, and Lisa's office continues to, I believe, robocall and talk to parents. But Mark, do you want to come up and talk a little bit about what you found out from talking with parents? Thank you.
Good evening, Mark McClinchy, Coordinator of Virtual Learning. Yes, when we reached out to families, we found out, I believe during Education Committee, we listed a slide of all the reasons that the literature speaks of students choosing cyber education. And when we spoke to families, we heard some of those exact same reasons. Safety was one of the #1 concerns, whether real or perceived. Families felt that their children would be in a safer environment, being taught at, learning from home. We heard medical reasons. We heard reasons for to go independently work at their own pace, so that they could go slower, they could go faster, they could get more individualized attention.
Thank you. Number 15, the Center for Educational Leadership. I'm looking at, this is a lot of dollars. Can you tell me what will be the tangible work product that they're going to give us?
Yes. So there are several parts to this agreement. I'll highlight a couple of those. One tangible work product is an online assessment called 5D. 5D are 5 dimensions of effective practice. I'll give you a couple examples: student engagement, talk structure in a classroom, clear expectations. And what happens is, just like our administrators and our career ladder teachers took the online Teachscape, which is also in here, which is around inter-rater reliability, this actually assesses the ability of a teacher leader or an administrator to go into a classroom, actually observe instruction, write what they're seeing, write what they would actually do in terms of providing support and professional development, and they get a comprehensive report across those 5 dimensions, and then their subcategories. I can get you some more information on this. So that's one tangible product, is we'll have results for every single career ladder teacher, as well as every administrator in the district, both central office and school-based, in terms of, you know, how they're able to do that. That work isn't evaluative. What it is used for is actually diagnostic, so that when they're working with observational specialists, other principals in the work, they actually have kind of a strengths and weakness analysis of their work. That's one tangible product. Another tangible product is a Center for Educational Leadership. We'll be working with our ITL2s. We roughly have, Jody, 65 ITL2s. Of course, this is the first year of the launch, and what we're asking our ITLs to do is take part of the RISE process and actually work on coaching and actually implementing the RISE process of constantly observing and conferring and coaching teachers. So CEL will actually help them, again, kind of unpack what they observe in a classroom, be able to appropriately provide support, know what support to provide. So they'll be conducting instructional rounds with the actual ITL2s. And those are the 2 big pieces. I can go into more detail, but I think those are 2 very significant tangible products that would come out of this work.
Okay, so who, when, and where will the staff have this training? I know you said the ITL2s.
Yes, so the ITL2s, we don't currently have the full calendar in place, but our ITL2s have an extended year. They have 10 additional days. Our CRIs have 15. Some of the work happens in their extended days in the summer, and also in evenings, weekends, for example. And some of the work would happen, I believe we're trying to minimize pullout, but they would have, I think, 5 or 6 scheduled instructional rounds that actually happen during the school day, where they go into other school and teams and actually do the work live in classrooms with other colleagues.
So will there be any support given to regular classroom teachers from this project?
CEL would not be directly providing feedback to regular classroom teachers, but it's through the development of the ITL2s, who will be working with the ITL2 caseload. Depends on whether we're talking K-5, K-8, middle, or high school, but they could work with a caseload of either 5 teachers very intensely or up to 10 teachers, and so those teachers that are in their caseload would most directly benefit because of the work in developing the ITL2.
Now, I see that they're from Seattle, Washington, so are they actually going to have people to come in and do this work? And how many people will that be? Do you know? I mean, if you don't know, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm not, so the 5D, which is an online assessment, they don't have to come in here to do that. So that's a licensing issue and a reporting issue. So, but they will be on site several times throughout the year. They would travel in and then leave. So there's not a full-time person on site. They typically, I'd have to get you more information. We're working out those details, but I believe 2 people typically come on site at a time. And the way that we schedule it to be, you know, considerate of travel expenses is that we try to group them so that their days typically are 5 days in a row versus, you know, the first week, the first Wednesday of the month, and then we jump into the second Wednesday of the month. So for travel purposes and the expenses of traveling across the country, we try to really chunk the days that they're on site.
So this contract is just for 1 year?
This contract is an up to amount, and it is a 1 year, it's a 1 year contract, yes.
This is almost $500,000. Well, I was just curious. It's a lot of money. Okay. Number 17. Now, I know this contractor well, and I'm not saying anything negative about her work. As a matter of fact, her work is outstanding. However, I do want to question, she used to work with Dr. Bivens. Now, we just did a contract with her in January for $208,000. Now, why are we paying Dr. Sims $180,000? I'm confused.
Yeah, so Dr. Connie Sims and Dr. Paula Bevan are colleagues in the work. However, Dr. Connie Sims is not necessarily on Bevan Consulting payroll. At times she is, depending on what work she does with certain other districts, but she's also independently employed as her own contractor. So what we did is that Connie, Dr. Sims, is actually independently being contracted through this action we're asking you to approve. But she still is in partnership with Dr. Bevan, but it doesn't mean that Dr. Bevan, that's not the only work that Dr. Sims actually does, is through Bevan Consulting.
And you know, I can understand that, but it seems as though I'm a little hard pressed to understand why she wasn't included under the consultant group that she's always been under with Dr. Bevans. I mean, since Dr. Bevans has been here, Dr. Sims has been a part of her group. Now it's broken in two, and she's getting her, explain to me how this money is working, 'cause
So
I need to do this.
I can understand why this would be confusing to the board. Dr. Sims usually helped Dr. Bevan when the caseload became too much for Dr. Bevan to be able to accommodate. What's happened here is that Dr. Sims actually has gone independent. She has other work with other districts, so she's now her own independent consulting group. It actually is more beneficial because you don't have the pass-through fee.
Okay. Number 25. Is this the contract that we use to hire nurses for preschool, for our fragile children?
I'm going to ask, Mary Jane, do you want to come up and, thank you.
Mary Jane Conley, Executive Director, Special Ed. Yes, it is one of the contracts that we use to provide nursing services for students with severe medical needs.
Okay, this isn't the nursing contract that we had before, where we received this lengthy letter from a parent that's concerned about the relationship that she has, that they've built with this one nurse. Why did you change?
It's not with Interim, Dr. Holly. It was with American Staffing and Maxim. That was the nurse currently who provides services for the student you're referring to is employed by American Staffing. And what we did is we moved to Maxim services. And now Maxim services will provide the same type and quality services as American Staffing has for our students.
So we have no students then in the district that will be using American Staffing nursing?
The only students in the district that will be using American Staffing are two, and they're two seniors, because board policy, as I understand, is that if they're a senior, we do not want to change any of their services that have been provided, so we did not. So two seniors will still be provided services with American Staffing. Other than that, no. There is one American Staffing nurse for our extended school year program because they required considerable training. That nurse required considerable training from Watson Institute for severe autism, and we can't get that training until the fall. So we're just using this service and for American Staffing for ESY, and we'll move to Maxim in the fall.
You know, I understand, and I'm not trying to be. Was there a reason why you went from American Staffing to Maxim?
Yes.
Why?
3 years ago, 3 years ago, we put out a request for proposal because our fees for individual nurses and personal care assistants was exorbitant. And what we did is this company, Maxim, came in. So we gave them a small contract the first year, a little larger contract the third year, the second year, and larger the third. And now for 12-13, it'll be the third year of 12-13. And because of the quality of service that they've provided, their access billing procedures, which have allowed us to bill access for more dollars, their reachability, and they've also provided some pretty innovative strategies to provide services for the students here in Pittsburgh. So we decided to go with Maxim.
I'm just a little disappointed when a parent and a student that has severe disabilities, you know, they make a relationship with a person, and then that rug is pulled from underneath that student. I just hope that we can provide that same kind of relationship for this student for next year, and throughout the years that they continue to go to Pittsburgh Public Schools. And I just needed to know what is money is the reason why you changed the contract. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mrs. Fink? Mrs. Khaleesi?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize that I was not at the education meeting where the cyber school was discussed. I do. I just have a quick few questions. How exactly are you going to be sure that the cyber student that you enroll is a city resident?
It's the same procedures that we use to enroll students in brick and mortar with the proof of residency. So we follow the same procedures that's already established by the board.
So, and I guess, Mr. Campbell, I'm going to ask you this question. The technology stuff, you know, the computers, that sort of thing, will they be mobile or would they be, like, fixed in somebody's home?
All technologies used in online or cyber learning are mobile technologies.
Okay, so so you know how you told us that the iPads, somebody stole it, we could find out where they are? Will you be able to do that with this situation?
So that will be a part of the conversation we're having with them on the 27th when we talk about data, how data will be captured and stored, as well as the devices being used.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering, that one would be a tough one. And then what happens when you have other students outside of our district that prefer our charter or our cyber school? I don't know how that all works. I can't even imagine how this is going to work, but.
I think I understand your question, and one of the things that we did at the Education Committee is that at the beginning of the presentation, we went through terminology, and one of the things that we're not doing is opening a charter. So,
yeah, I shouldn't have said that,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
it really is this whole cyber thing people get, but I can let Ira actually answer that, but in order for a non-city resident to attend our online school, they would have to pay tuition just like they would if they went to Kappa.
Right, I get that. So it's open to that. Am I under the understanding it's open to that?
Yes, we're not, that's not a group that we're actually marketing towards.
I get that,
Yeah.
but if it happens, it happens. You accept it, correct?
Well, I don't want to mislead the board because we really feel that that probably isn't likely going to happen, because if a student, let's say, is living in North Allegheny has a student, their school district right now is paying the tuition bill for that student to go to PA Cyber. So for a parent to take what the district is paying and say, I'm going to turn that around and pay our district money to go to our school, I'm not quite sure what the benefit is, because at that point, they wouldn't be eligible for the promise. So it's something that we're open to, but I can't say that we're at the place of actually having a strong strategy around that. And I don't know, Ira, if you want to weigh in on anything legal.
I don't think he really needs to at this point. What I'm thinking of is a little different, that you're thinking of legality of this. I'm thinking of an opportunity. I'm thinking of it a little bit different than you. Why have a school district pay PA Cyber when it could pay one of its sister schools that provides probably a better quality product? I just want to make sure that if it goes, especially since you're using like the intermediate units program, they're known to be one of the best. So I'm just trying to understand. I just want to understand, if you're opening this up come September, and okay, you make whatever effort into getting our own cyber students back, which I understand, why are you stopping there? What would make you stop there?
Dr. Lipper, I'm sorry, Ms. Please, because I think you addressed this at education.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm asking her. The home district is not obligated to pay us. They're obligated to pay us a cyber school.
If a student goes to a cyber charter school, it is a charter school. The school district of residence must pay the charter school the amount required under the formula, which I'm not going to get into here. If a student from another district attends a Pittsburgh public school, which this would be, this is will be one of our schools. The school district of residence is not obligated to pay. The parent can pay, but now if the district figures out that it may be better off to do this, that may happen. But frankly, from what we've worked with, the plan at this point is to capture these students who are in cyber charter schools that are city residents. I'm not precluding that, but that's the difference in terms of payment.
Thank you. That clarifies a heck of a lot more in my head. Okay. Okay. I get it now. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi. Go ahead.
Just for clarification, I want to do another general thing, and I was going to ask you if I could do this in business. If I may instead ask you at the beginning of business, before you begin that portion, if you would allow me a second to explain the new agenda.
Hopefully I'll remember. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, I have a few questions. Before I ask my questions, I just want to remind Dr. Lane, as I mentioned before, we are in a public building, public discussion, discussing public dollars in a building that has a locked front door. And when you get on the second floor, if you're lucky enough to get in the building, you have locked doors on the second floor. And then the meeting, a public meeting, is held in a room with limited seating. And I want to suggest again that we should make ourselves accessible to the public, go out of the way if necessary. This meeting should be held on the first floor, large room, and if necessary, have our employees sitting at the door signing people in and keeping the door unlocked during the time of the meeting. I just think during these tough times that we bend over backwards to show how we are spending the money and justifying it, and justify how we're spending it, but more importantly, just making it available, total discussion for the public. So.
Mr. Brentley, you mentioned that last time, and we did check. The front door was unlocked. We had a member of our school police force at the door in case someone came to the door to make sure they could get in. If people come up and try to come through the back way, and by that I mean the Dithridge entrance, and I know board members and staff, for example, have badges, that is a swipe-in only door. So that's why we want to have a sign there to make sure members of the public know that they must come to the Belfield entrance. And furthermore, if you come in that Dithridge entrance and do not have a badge, then you can't swipe into the hallway either because that door is locked. So what we want to make sure is members of the public know that they need to come to the Belfield entrance, which, and I personally did not check it today, but I do believe it is unlocked. I know that at the last time we did have a school police officer sitting out there so that they can see people come up to the door. I know when I came in the door to the hallway, I came in without my badge, so I'm not sure if that has changed since I came in, but yeah, it was not locked.
The door on the Dithridge side in the second floor elevator lobby was propped open. So, because I was out there right before the start of this meeting and it was propped open.
I guess I just say that to say we are trying to be very careful about this. Now, in terms of the actual physical room, the board makes a determination about the room. I have asked about a potential change here, and the board desired not to make that change. So I think that's something that, you will have to discuss with your fellow board members, because I can't unilaterally make that decision.
Thank you. Well, I made my comments. Once again, it is our job to make this available to the public on whose decision or whose shoulders this rests on. Should not be a maze to get in to see how we're spending taxpayers' dollars, and then in a very cramped and small room, it makes absolutely no sense. My question is on number 10, the waterfront company, and I just want to focus again on the cost of action shall be at a rate of $3,500. That is it out of the door. There are no connection fees, startup fees, this fees, lunch fees, pass fees, door, whatever. There are no other fees other than $3,500. And out of the $3,500, they will also provide the connection, the laptop, and the mouse, and the printer as well. All of that for $3,500 per
Yeah,
student.
That is correct, per student. And I'm not sure if you said, but the instructors also come in that $3,500 package.
Okay. Secondly, I know it's difficult because we don't know, but I feel a little uncomfortable passing something like this without a not-to-exceed amount. That always concerns me. While the target may be 100, we can clearly, someone can read into this as opening up the door, and with no not-to-exceed amount can do exactly what they want. So I have some concerns with that. I think if we target, if it's going to be 50 we're going to target, then we would say not to exceed 50 times the 3,500. And, okay, that's it for that one. The next one is number 12. This is for Coro. If I'm not mistaken, Coro was also involved with this situation at Westinghouse last year. And so my question is, do we or have we received an evaluation on Coro before entering into another contract with them?
You are correct, Mr. Brentley. We had a separate contract with Coro to provide students, actually, for student leadership. So that was different than the work that we had under the teaching institutes with the career ladder teachers. And I don't know, Dr. Lane, I don't have the information, and I don't know if Dr. Tu or Dr. Lane does, concerning the success of Coro working with the students at Westinghouse throughout this year. But this part of the contract isn't the part that actually supported Westinghouse. So I don't know if, Dr. Lane, if you have any information?
No, I don't, but we certainly can ask Dr. Crenshaw if she'd like to give us any information about the work of Coro at Westinghouse this last year. But as Dr. Lippert said, this contract is separate from the Westinghouse contract. And I do not know if Dr. Crenshaw intends to renew the Coro contract for next year or not. I don't believe I've seen it as a board tab, so I'm not sure what her intentions are in that regard.
Okay. Well, Doctor, the reason why I raised that question is, as the major problems, failures that we experienced over the last year with Westinghouse, I have yet to see anyone be evaluated and be held accountable for what happened at Westinghouse, other than 2 employees. And my personal opinion is that in some cases they were used as scapegoats, not actually directly involved with the massive lack of communication that ended in failure. Secondly, I understand that if this is Coro, but they're providing different services, that still doesn't really mean much, because we should still have an evaluation. And that kind of concerns me again, because that's similar to the CEP. We know about the massive failures with CEP over the years, but we allowed them to flip the script, change their name, and we gave them another contract. And so some of the same practices that were not successful, that we exposed our kids to for 4 years, we kind of gave it to them again, but we just changed the name. And so it's important that when we have a relationship, a business relationship with certain companies, that we stop, we evaluate them before they change their look and come back at us. And then we can determine if it's necessary to get into an additional relationship. But it's also, I think, it's something that we want to know for the very near future. So if it's a legitimate opportunity for us to get into another agreement with.
Mr. Brentley, in regard to CEP, I just wanted to make a clarification there. It wasn't actually a name change for CEP, and Mr. Weiss, correct me if I'm wrong here, but as I understood it, what they did was subcontract our contract to another company. So it wasn't them making a name change, it was them subcontracting the work that we had contracted with them to another company. Is that not correct?
It was assigned to another company. It's a different company. It is not the same company with a different name. So Dr. Lane's correct.
Okay. Well, for the sake of time, I disagree. It is one and the same. If you look on their website, if you look at what they're presenting in Philadelphia, they are referencing Pittsburgh. They are involved, tied to it, has some hands, recommendations, an extension of, or whatever. It is still a part of, and there was information given in last month's meeting that exactly wasn't accurate. I was actually contacted, and the information was shared. So we agree to disagree. The bottom line was for CEP, for what they did not do in the 4 years or 5 years that they had a contract with this district, and what they exposed our children to, in some cases shouldn't be allowed within a 5-mile radius of anybody's child, let alone being involved with other companies that can subcontract or present themselves again. And I think that we have to find a way to develop a defense against those companies in getting access to our children. So we can agree just to disagree on that one. My next question is on number 24. Now, 24 here, this is the maximum hiring, and I guess as well as 25. This is providing the nursing services for Pioneer and Conroy. Now, I don't know about the other colleagues, but I received three calls concerning our furloughs, and some having some differences with not having the administration understand their level of certification, but nevertheless they received furloughs and will not be back next year. These two schools offer a personalized, a different kind of services for those students. Why would we lay off or furlough some and then put these companies? Let me ask you another way. Are some of the folks that we have under contract, will they be doing the services of the individuals that we are furloughing?
I'm not sure if I don't state this correctly, Dr. Lane or Jody, you can correct me, but the services that are provided, the nursing services, require a certain certification. An RN, I'm sure, is the minimum requirement, registered nurse, and the folks on the furlough list are not registered nurses. Is that correct, Jody?
These contracts are not to do bargaining unit work or the work of any individuals who are being furloughed.
Okay. Are we, as a district, out of compliance with the number of nurses that we have on staff? Are we supposed to have more nurses based upon the district school size as well as employees? And if so, well, I'll let somebody answer that first. So.
To my knowledge, Mr. Brentley, we have the appropriate number of nurses, but these contracts are separate and apart from that. So the nurses that we have on staff are a different, clearly a different group, and these folks are not going to be doing the work that those nurses could have, should have done. So these contracts are contracts that we've had for a long time that really aren't related to anyone receiving a furlough notice.
Okay. Well, would it make sense if we're spending over $2 million, it looks like here, would it make sense to just hire permanent staff if we're paying this on an annual basis, I believe?
I think Ms. Conley can probably respond to this, but typically in some cases it does make sense to hire permanent staff, other cases it doesn't. And so that's why you usually see a mix. For example, if a high school is going to have a school nurse that's there every day and dealing with all the students, it makes sense to have a school nurse do that, be a staff member. But sometimes in our situations where we have students that are receiving, are medically fragile and receiving this one-to-one specialized care, it makes more sense to go through a staffing service. So I don't know if you want to respond to that or not. One of the big issues I think can be, and this is not speaking specifically to this, is if a child's medically fragile and you have a permanent employee that's doing that work, and that person can't be at work, you got a problem, because then the child can't be at school. Whereas if you have a nursing service, then they're responsible for finding a trained substitute that can come in and be with that child for the day. Whereas when you're using permanent staff, that's a more difficult thing. And so.
Okay. Well, the final comment is, but our staff nurses are qualified and certified to also provide the services needed for these kinds of services?
Not being a medical professional, my guess would be yes, but I don't, I can't speak to the intricacies of some of the requirements that these nurses have to fulfill.
Okay. Now, do we have a relationship, we meaning staff and administration, with the district's nurses association or whatever organization that they have amongst the nurses? Is there any communications at all between the two groups?
Well, I know I've met with them myself, so I'd say yes. And our nurses are represented by the PFT, just like other district professionals.
Okay. But I guess with the nurses, it's just like everybody else. While they're all up under one unit, they all have their own little pull out where nurses are all together, or maybe secretarials, have a little association. So I'm just curious. But if not, I would encourage that we develop some communication just for the purposes that we won't miss a beat with providing the services to those needy students that are in these two schools here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Dr. Lippert, how many students did you say from within the district attended online schools? How many of our Pittsburgh Public School students attended online school last year?
That could have been in our brick and mortar schools. It's roughly 789.
And what do we pay the programs where they go? The systems, whatever the proper word is.
Our regular education student costs us a little over $13,000, and our special education students that opt into a cyber charter cost us about $28,000. The total is roughly around little over $11 million, about $11.3 million annually.
And so this program that we're going to use in conjunction with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit will cost us $3,500. Is that correct?
Right, so if you think about it, if we're paying for a regular education student to currently right now go to PA Cyber, we're paying a little over $13,000. When we attract the student back, guarantee them that we're going to support them to be Promise eligible and capitalize on the Pittsburgh Promise, we would pay $3,500 to support their tuition, and then the other $9,000 goes into supporting the operation of school as well as other district initiatives. So that's how you recoup some of the money that's currently going out. And our commitment is to provide a better service than they're currently getting in other online cyber institutions.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to payments authorized, numbers 36 through 43. They're the blue pages. Mr. Sumter, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mrs. Zuda. In this section, I just have a question on item number 37. That's the board authorization is requested to make payment to Gerald Davis for his work with the Girls Basketball League and team at Pittsburgh Linden. Is Mr. Davis an employee of the district?
That is a question I don't think we were prepared to answer. Dr. Lane, I don't know if you know, I do not think he is, but I would want to make sure I'm on record saying the correct thing. So we're probably going to have to get back to you on that because Barb is not here tonight.
Dr. Rudiak is not here. My thought is no, because I think we would have brought it through personnel had he been an employee of the district, so I don't believe he is.
Okey-doke. This type of activity is, I would say, desired throughout the district, that we need more coaches or people that are capable of coaching, and especially at the lower grade level. And if we could pay other folks to coach at that level and develop those younger athletes so that by the time they get to later levels of playing and grades, they'll be more prepared to do so. There was a big push, or at least I had some concerns of paying for elementary school coaches or things of that nature. So this is in line with that, but my feeling is that it's a wonderful activity. It's providing training and guidance to the kids at Linden, but I would hope that it would spread throughout the district and we can get other people to step up for this type of activity if we can't find qualified individuals within our employee ranks. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Zuda.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Ms. Shealy.
I think I'm going to make a slightly different comment. I missed most of Mr. Sumter's comments, I'm sorry. But on item number 37, I was actually glad to see that they found a way to compensate Mr. Davis. The basketball program at Linden is very much valued by that school community. And he did this without any guarantee of compensation. So I would just like to commend Ms. Burgess and Dr. French and the others, and Dr. Rudiak, for finding a way to compensate him. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. Mr. McCray.
Just a couple quick things. Okay, you got it. Number 38 is summer band camps. Mrs. Fink, you're going to take that one, right?
Oh, go right ahead.
No, I'm just glad to see it. I think I'll let you toot the horn. Number 42, the early childhood field trips. Could you do me a favor? There are some in here that do this at no charge. I know when I was in fire prevention, I did it at no charge. Could you separate some of those? Because I'd like to highlight that and let people know that this is a free service and this is a fee service. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Mr. Eisler.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Going to item 43, and similar to other questions I've asked, is this an increase or a decrease from last year in terms of our expenditure for funds for children in approved private licensed schools who are special education eligible?
This is actually a decrease.
And is that within the lines of the reorganization of special ed?
It is. One of the things we're trying to do is provide better services for, for our students and take students back from the approved private school placements or the LPSs. I think we did provide a chart, Mary Jane, in the board update.
Yes, you did. It was
So
in the board update.
It details a little bit more.
Fortunately, the public doesn't get to see that update, nor do they understand what's going on within the district in terms of trying to make us a sustainable district. And we have decreased the number of private providers also, Dr. Lippert?
Yes, I believe it was last year, or was it 2 years ago? Holy Family, we started to provide the Holy Family services on site.
And it all depends on the IEP, that we are not in violation of any child's IEP in doing what we're doing, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Zuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Dr. Hawley.
Yes, number 37. I'm glad that they're able to pay him, but I think that the district needs to be mindful that we need to do these services in all elementary schools. And I'm going to agree with Mr. Sumter on this and even make it more visible, because we played Linden and they beat us many times, but the girls did. But I am really concerned that this is not something that's widespread among all the elementary schools. I know we're trying to hold down costs, but some principals are able to find creative ways to support this project, this activity in their schools by using their after-school dollars to support this, their intramural dollars to support this. So I'm glad that they were able to pay Mr. Davis, but I also want to make sure that all students throughout the district, elementary schools, are given the same opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mrs. Fink.
Once again, I applaud the financing of band camp. I just, having been there many times, I really think this is such a worthwhile activity, not just for the music education, but for the camaraderie and the team building, and I just think it's a wonderful experience for the kids. I am very disheartened to learn that there probably is not going to be money to pay the bagpipe instructor at Carrick, and I do believe we need to find some way to get some, that's a unique program. We have had at least one student that I'm sure about who was so proficient with bagpipes that she won a trip to Scotland to participate in summer band bagpipe instruction. And that I believe was 2 years ago. So that was due to the instruction she got from the bagpipe instructor that Carrick used. So I really would like to see that program continue. And on item, this is the number 42, what a wonderful variety of places to take preschool children. I just can't get over the variety and different kinds of experiences that the little people would have going to these different places. I think it's cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. Mrs. Khaleesi.
Thank you. And I'm not at all saying anything negative about Mr. Davis. Don't have a clue about any of that. The only thing that I had questioned, and I don't have my answers with me, was if it went through the appropriate process that it's supposed to go through when we have any kind of sport coaches that are hired. So if we hire somebody, because the indication was there was no one in the school that was interested in that job, that I understand, it's then supposed to go out to the district before it's given to somebody outside of the district. I was looking just to be sure if the legality was covered for that. So you don't have to answer it now, Dr. Lane. I already mentioned that to Jody, and it was just something I was concerned about and I wanted to bring to your attention. And then the other thing I thought was like really cool in here was number 40. This is to provide an integrating SimPad training to support the newly purchased simulation equipment. Teachers will learn how to optimize use of the stimulation mannequins and will develop scenarios that provide students with opportunities to develop patient assessments and care skills. The mannequins will become interactive, capable of talking and breathing and having measurable vital signs and heart rhythms. This has got to be the coolest thing I ever heard. I can't wait to see one of these things. It would freak me out, but I think it would be the coolest thing in the world. And it's a very small amount of money. And I think that people need to know that we provide these sort of things for our students to have some sort of hands-on experience before they actually see a real person and they're doing these vitals. So I just wanted to mention that. That's all, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, number 37, I just want to echo my concerns of Dr. Lane, or agree with her. I think consistency is the most important thing for this school. We were very creative in paying the individual. I'm sure the students appreciated it, but once again, we have to find a way to be consistent so this kind of services or programs are available for all of our students. Number 38, the band camp is always a good item, but I do want to ask you, Dr. Lane, to send a memo to all who will be attending and participating. Remind our staff to remind our students that it's important that they have fun, important to understand this is a marching activity in front of the public, and that when they are producing their music and their step routines, that it is a marching band and that they are not in a music video. As you do know, there are times when sometimes some of our students in the past, if not the way that they wear their outfit, but their actual steps and routine can make folks a little uncomfortable. And we have to do our job to set some guidelines, and I think you can find a nice creative way of sending them a note. Cover yourselves, dress well, enjoy yourselves, but act like ladies when performing, and act like men. when performing, because just in recent years, it's gotten a little out of hand. And folks are embracing it and accepting it, and it's kind of, it's not a good thing, because a lot of kids of younger age attend our games and get an opportunity to see them participate. Secondly, if we could find a way, Mr. Camarda, for the equipment at Oliver to make sure it's transferred, the music equipment to Perry, and also the Langley equipment would be made available to the other schools, surviving schools.
I followed up.
Brashear. Brashear, that's fine.
Spoke to Mr. Gavlik about this.
Okay.
Exchanged email with him.
He doesn't have the music, though.
No,
This
no,
is for the music
not the musical
equipment.
instruments.
No, I'm talking about the music equipment.
We're making sure that we have a very robust movement of musical instruments to make sure that all students have what they need and even more. So
Okay.
yes, we are doing that.
Okay, okay. And, okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Before I move on, I want to agree with Mr. Brentley as far as the motions of the band participants, so thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. I'm old-fashioned. Okay, we'll move on to general authorizations, numbers 44 through 52 on the yellow. Mr. Sumter, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Azuda. On 44, we got an intro to that, and that's the CTE partnership with Duquesne University and the Josh Gibson Foundation. And when I first read this, it just hit me as being excellent. I say that in the sense I did go to school with, play Little League ball with a relative of Josh Gibson, Edward Petey Gibson. And when Shenley first won state championship back in the mid-'60s, he was an integral member of that team. The thing that gets me is that recently I was at Malines, and I was asking a couple students what they wanted to do or what they wanted to be later on. And wasn't to my surprise, but their desire was to be pro athletes, professional athletes. And their focus or their direction on what school colors they liked in college, what schools they wanted to go to, and where they were going to play and be successful. Now, both of these young gentlemen were smaller than I am, but their desire was to become pro athletes. So I started talking to them about all the other avenues related to sports that they could be involved with. We were talking about sports management and being an attorney and doing contracts and all these things. And then to see a board tab that's precisely, exactly doing what a lot of folks need to be exposed to, that there's more than just being the star on the team. There's more than being the high-paid pro athlete. And if you ask the athlete, I'm sure a lot of their agents are making a lot of money. And that was their concern, was they just wanted to make a lot of money. They wanted to be rich. So I was telling them all the other avenues that are available. And hopefully this will increase that for them. On item number 45, that's the implementation of the first baccalaureate diploma program, summer program. My question, this is for students entering 11th and 12th grade at Pittsburgh-Obama in the fall. And the question was, why is this being carried out at Faison?
There'll be,
Okay, go ahead. I'll wait for the answer to give the reason I asked the question.
no, that is it. They'll be between buildings this summer, so, because they'll be moving, so that's why.
Kids from Obama come from all over the city to go to Obama. Faison is an elementary school. Why not let high schoolers be trained in a high school facility with high school furniture, high school desk, high school feeling? Faison, are we going to put more furniture in there for them to accommodate them?
I doubt it, but I'm not sure about the plan here. And so I'll have to find out more about it myself. I believe the reason Faison was selected was, one, it's air-conditioned. And, yeah. And two, it's in the same general proximity, you know, it's not, you know, like walking distance from where Obama is currently located, but it's in the same general proximity. But we can certainly see if there are other facilities that would be available that would be relatively easy for kids to get to and have air conditioning. But my guess is that the air conditioning was the issue.
That makes sense as far as the air conditioning. Other than that, it doesn't. My concern is that from when I was in Faison, I saw the furniture, and it gives you that tiny feeling that you're in an elementary school.
You are. And you're right.
So I'm just saying, you know, to help the kids feel good, not feel that they're in that, you know. But okay,
Okay, we'll see if
I can
there's
understand the logic or lack of, only in the sense that Obama draws from all over the city. So proximity should not be an issue for kids that are mobile in the first place. That's all I have for this, or no, on item number 50. That's the one we're having the donation of Pittsburgh Pirate tickets for the 2012 Summer Dreamers Academy. Excellent donation. Applaud Chaz Kellum and the work that he's doing with the Pittsburgh Pirates, manager of diversity initiatives for the Pirates. Are the tickets only for the students, or are they for family members also?
I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to loop back in with Eddie Wilson to verify. It does say campers in the board tab, but we'll double check to see if it's extended to families.
Because if you give it to the kids and they can't get to the game without their parents. A minor question on item number 51. Again, we'll applaud the donation of from the Allegheny Intermediate Unit for the Early Childhood Program to participate in the kindergarten transition planning team. Is the amount enough? And what are we going to get for that amount?
I'm going to have Carol Barone-Martin explain this.
It's never enough. It's just what every school district that participated as part of this initiative received. They had a grant. So last year we received the same amount, and we were able to purchase calendars and give them to the students when they registered for kindergarten.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Ms. Shealy?
Actually, on item 45, I had a different question, because you mentioned that you would look into other facilities, but this reads that it's already started, that it started Monday.
It did for the one world history class. That's correct.
So moving those kids might be a consideration since they're already started.
Yeah, we're going to have to look into, and Allison's not able to be here tonight, but we're going to have to look into what communication is already gone out, how many students are actually capitalizing on the multiple courses being offered, to see if it's possible even to consider another location if we had another one.
So you actually so I'm thinking that you don't have the answer, because my actual question was, what is the enrollment?
Yeah, I actually don't have that tonight, but we can follow up in the board update.
If it's, and I'm not sure how many spaces would need to be utilized at a time, but there are spaces in Faison that do have more adult-style furniture. For example, the library furniture is not really small. Often, cafeteria furniture can be used by adults, so no. Oh, I've sat in those before, but no, it's not like for kindergartners. I'm saying it's not full adult furniture, but it's not like primary school furniture either. But as I said, it may be very difficult to move them if students have already planned to be there. So we'll see if there's anything possible.
Thank you. On number 48, why? And that's the additional vacation day. Just why?
September 17th is Jewish holiday, which is normally on our school calendar, and we erroneously omitted it, so that's a correction.
That's all I need to know. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Ms. Shilling. Mr. McCray.
Thank you. I'll start out with the donation from the Pirates. I'm going to steal Mr. Eisler's thunder again. Usually it goes the other way, so you steal mine. This is great. This is phenomenal. I mean, the stadium is one of the best stadiums in the world. The kids get an opportunity to see professional baseball.
And the Pirates are winning.
Are they winning?
Yeah.
Oh, where'd they get a team? Anyway, we have, oh, okay. We have 4,800 tickets. 4,800 tickets is, what is the current enrollment for Summer Dreamers? Do we know? Roughly?
You know what, I don't even want to speculate, Doctor. I haven't seen an update recently, and Jan and Eddie are not here tonight, so we can.
I'm guessing, so I'll correct this for you if I'm way off, but I think it's around 2,300 students. I'm not sure about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that leaves enough for the families, and that's the bonus. That's an absolute bonus right there. Again, thanks to the Allegheny Intermediate Unit for their donation. And on number 52, I just want to remind people that the only high schools that are, Perry and Oliver aren't the only high schools that are combining this year. Langley is moving into Brashear. Langley is moving into Brashear. And I want to make sure that the same kind of safeguards are in place. Dr. Lane, can you elaborate on what is available for the students there to make the transition equally as easy as it is from Perry and Oliver?
I probably can give you more information by actually getting you something in writing, because it's hard for me to call it up. But both Brashear and Langley have been engaged in some very similar activities that have been going on at Perry Oliver. I mean, bringing, well, of course, the school's out now, but bringing students over to visit, making sure kids know they're welcome, and I think we just lost part of our power. And getting student schedules ready. So yes, we're, as I said, there's been quite a bit of work. Now, I think that other thing to remind the board that Brashear has actually a lot of resources in it because it is the Teacher Institute. And so they have actually as many resources to bring to bear on the merger of the two schools as Perry Oliver has had. So I don't want us to minimize the importance of that merger, but as I said, Brashear has significant resources because of being the Teacher Institute.
Thank you. I think that's what you had mentioned at one time. I just wanted to elaborate on that because, again, like you said, it's not to minimize anything here, but those students deserve the same kind of attention as everybody else. Go Mustangs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Mr. Eisler.
Thanks, Mrs. Azuda. You know, Mr. McCray and enough who are donating to the city schools. I mean, I think that obviously the Josh Gibson Foundation has been recognized, but also the fact that Duquesne University is partnering with them and students can pick up college credits is quite significant. And I think that the people who have put it together for the board from Career and Technical Education deserve support. Again, I think what we know about summer with students, the idea of the IB program doing something in the summer, up to 200 students is tremendous. The fact that we're going ahead with the online academy, I again think it is something that is long, long overdue that this board has been talking about for years, so it's great to see it happening. The Pirates, ever generous with what they have done for us over the years, is great. And the intermediate unit, again, I think that the fact that Dr. Hippert and Dr. Lane have developed a relationship to the type of services that we're getting is really great. And I know that this transition program, knowing something about it, how important it has been, not only to the teachers, but to the parents and the students who participate. Again, I think that the grant would be more significant if everybody in the Commonwealth supported early childhood the way this board does. And again, I think that on 52, the Heinz Endowments has been very, very instrumental in this particular item. And again, I think they're to be commended for the work that they're doing on behalf of the district, just one of many of the foundations in Pittsburgh. But I know that they've really led the way on this one and supported it very, very well. So thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Dr. Holly.
Yes, for number 44, we've talked a lot about Duquesne University and Mr. Gibson. I also want to remind the board and the community that Angela Mike, our executive director for CTE, worked diligently on this project as well. So I just want to, if we were giving shout outs, I would want to give a shout out to her and thank her for that work. Also, for those mannequins that you that you think are so cool. Okay, when they start talking and walking, let me know. Yeah. She was able to bring that forward as well, so I'm excited for that work. Number 46. I really wanted the board members to have an idea of the great work that's being done at these 3 schools to work with those children that might be given gifted services, and basically for those children who are not identified as being gifted, but they are getting some of the same services as gifted ed students. But I also would like to know why Fulton was not a part of this board tab, because they are receiving so many students from Fort Pitt, where Fort Pitt had this program as well.
We are working currently with Mr. Bivens and the Fulton community. We're hoping to bring that recommendation forward. We just had to do some more follow-up to make sure that it was a sound recommendation. But we do anticipate bringing Fulton also to the board. We just need a little bit more time to do the parent follow-up, the community meetings, and finalize some of the work.
Do you think that that will be done before the school year starts?
Yeah, we needed probably at least 2 more meetings, and with the school year being at the end and rushing things and people being committed to 5th grade promotions and things like that, we couldn't complete the work in time to put in the board tabs. So we wanted to make sure we did our due diligence, and we'll be hopefully bringing you a recommendation either in July and August.
Thank you. I really just wish that Dr. Lamar was able to give us a brief summary of how this program actually works and how it can benefit our middle school students and our high school students, talking about being promise ready and really building our gifted ed program within all of our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mrs. Fink. Mrs. Khaleesi. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, I just want to also just give a shout out, I think, on number 50 for the pirate tickets, and it is mentioned in here about Mr. Chaz Callum. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, he was the guest speaker for Conroy's graduation, and he is also a proud Pittsburgh Public School graduate. Number 45, is Dr. Walters involved with this at all?
Yes, Allison McCarthy is working with Dr. Walters.
Okay, and they are picking his brain for suggestions. He's a brilliant guy when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, are we tying it in, or I'm sure he has a way of tying it into what he's doing?
Yes, Dr. Walters worked with Allison McCarthy on the selection of the actual course offerings that were going to be offered in the summer program, as well as, I believe, also helping with staffing and encouraging teachers to actually teach in the summer program. I'm not sure if he had anything to do with the selection of the facility. We can follow up on that.
And number 46, I just want to point out the on-site gifted services for Colfax and Dilworth, and Grandview. But I also want to point out, again, that had Northview continued to be open, it normally would have been available to get those services. And this is a terrible crime that's committed around this table against poor children, African American children, and children who just don't have the voice that those other 3 schools have. And here it is, just perfect example, which we'll see many, many other opportunities bypass those students when we can make a decision, shut down the campus and put those kids on buses. 99% of those parents don't have vehicles, and then we say, be promise ready. Makes no sense at all. The last thing I wanted to mention is we talked about the program with the mannequins, the interactive mannequins. I want to remind folks that last year we recognized the Gateway Medical Students program here. Those students have been working on it for the last 2 years. They have a program, and I believe it's at West Penn Hospital, and it's an entire system that's set up that is breathtaking. When you walk in, they actually have half of an emergency medical vehicle inside, and the kids are taught to go on to identify things, work with the mannequins. Each of them are given a MD medical doctor as a tutor that follows them all the way through high schools. And so I'm going to ask again, Dr. Lane, if we can reach out and partner with this wonderful, wonderful program, Gateway Medical Program. I think they have about 20 students, but looking for partnerships to expand. And I'm going to ask again if we can follow up and make that program available to a lot of our other students in the district. Thank you.
Just actually would like to combine the question. Mr. Brentley or Dr. Holly didn't explicitly ask the question, so I will. Are the services following the kids from Northview? The gifted pilot?
Not in terms of on-site gifted support. The students from Northview would be going to Morrow and also King, and they currently do not participate in on-site gifted services, but those students would resume, the students who are identified as gifted would resume the services at the Gifted Center for next year.
Dr. Lane, I think separately I expressed to you my concerns about the pilot. And I would actually like to have that conversation in a little more depth. I guess, and I'll say my biggest concern is that while I think the pilot does well to serve the children who are identified as high performing but not gifted, I'm not so certain it meets the needs of the other students. And so I would like to have that conversation in more depth about how the pilot is working to meet those needs. And this is quite a costly program. And if it's not meeting the needs of everyone, then I think we should consider how we can do it a little differently. Thank you.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I don't want to belabor the issue on the gifted program. However, with the recommendation before us, it didn't seem to follow the presentation that was given at the Education Committee meeting in terms of saying which schools we're going to keep the pilot, what schools we're going to lose the pilot, whether we're going to continue the pilot with the results of the pilot, the evaluation of the pilot, et cetera. So to not have that conversation incomplete at the legislative meeting, which means, you know, you would say, do you want this item to be discussed in further detail? I think some of that information, either between now and then, or it can be recommended to be pulled. It might be a short or long conversation, but I didn't see the direct relationship from that presentation and the recommendation before us. That's all. And really wanting to get more in depth of who's in the pilot, who's not in the pilot, who's sent into the Gifted Center, who's not, the cost, et cetera. So.
What I suggest we do that might be helpful to the board is we will provide some written information to you in that regard, and if that is insufficient, then we'll figure out a way and a time that, you know, we either can discuss it or wait until such time as we do, because as the board I know is aware, we had tried to make an effort not to have an education meeting in July, and so that's a little bit of, that's tripped us up in several cases, and this might be one of those. So.
Dr. Hawley.
Okay, but I want to be clear. The parents from Dilworth, Fulton, and where is it? Grandview. No, I didn't talk to anybody from Grandview. The Dilworth and Fulton, they are really excited about having that program. Dilworth has a significant number of identified gifted students in that building. But the parents in that building who have their children in the gifted program want the program that they currently have at their school. And they're willing to not go to the gifted center and keep their children there. As I talk to Dr. Lamar and talk with other parents that are in that building, they are very excited about the work that transpires there. And Mr. Bivens, who has a very high achieving school with a high number of free and reduced lunch students, they are very excited as well about doing that kind of work in their building. So if it's not working somewhere else, I can vouch for the fact that it is definitely working very well in those two schools, and parents are excited about having this opportunity. And I'm just glad, I just want to make sure that the children who have had this opportunity at Fort Pitt are able to get that same opportunity at Fulton. However, they are being split into 3 different schools as well, and it's not being offered to them at Arsenal or at Wolfslair, which is something that we may come back to you again during the school year and see how we can include those children as well.
Thank you. Moving on to Committee on Business and Finance, Mr. Camarda. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The only reason I asked, Madam Chair, if I could have the floor for a second or two prior to the business agenda is because if you all noticed this month, your agenda packet was designed differently. And what you see in some of the pink sections are contracts and what appears to be contracts and consultants. As we would normally see them, they are not. These are what you would see as your resolutions that we used to have on 1 or 2 pages. These are them broken down for you in more detail because they are actually contracts and consultants in the sense of software or those sort of things. So staff has been trying to find a different way of organizing this agenda for us so it is easier for us to understand. So as Ms. Shealy made a comment earlier about her questioning some of these things, I wanted to clear up when you see new, renew, or things like that. A lot of these are licenses, software packages, but now you're getting much more detail for those sort of things. That is all I really wanted to bring to the table, and Mr. Camarda can elaborate more if he chooses to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi. Mr. Camarda.
Thank you, Mr. Khaleesi. Just a few items that I want to make sure I point out for you as we go forward. You have items 29 and 30. They're your annual items that we have related to homestead exemptions and the Act 1 resolution that we would not exceed the index for tax increases. It's an annual obligation we have to file that paperwork with the state. Wanted to point that out to you. We had advised you of our Overbrook sale in when we provided the board information. So we have a bid we're recommending related to our Overbrook sale, and you'll see an amendment to the agreement with the city of Pittsburgh. So we will be continuing that they will collect our earned income taxes for years 2010 and prior. We've moved to Jordan Tax Services as required from the selected company for the earned income tax collection, and the city continues collecting our real estate tax. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Camarda. Okay. Mr. Sumter, well, everyone, we'll begin with consultants and contracted services. They're numbers 1 through 23. They're the pink pages. 1 through 23. Mr. Sumter, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. On number 1, very quickly, this is a contract to purchase books for our libraries.
Yes.
Okay. I was just thinking on a side that sometimes folks can donate books to the school district as they do for book sales throughout the city and the libraries and Carnegie libraries, but that might be a little stretch. I would ask Mr. Campbell, but to not belabor this meeting, to give us maybe a one-liner in each one of the software items, but that's okay. If you could maybe send us, or can we just go by what it says here, that this is what they're for? I know a lot of times I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 software tabs. Seems the renewals make sense because obviously we did it before. Are any of them brand new that we haven't had before? They're all renewals? Okay. Or I'm getting mixed messages. They're not renewals or are renewals?
So there are two classes of software here, the software from the academic side and then the software from the technology side of the house. All of the requests from the technology side of the house, those are renewals. Those are just like maintenance annual renewals.
And the education ones are, which items, just off the top of your head real quick?
That would be item 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 10, actually. Most of them.
The ones you just named are the academic ones?
Yes.
I'm not going to belabor the board's time. If I have any questions about this, I'll get with you, Mr. Campbell. And perhaps maybe if you can give us a more elaboration or explanation as to why we need all this software. We'll go right ahead.
Sorry about that, coming in late. So item 4 supports,
What about 2? Can you start
I'm
with
sorry,
2?
I thought sorry.
Two's related to an HR activity.
Yeah.
Moving right along?
Okay, okay, so number 4, WordBook Online is an online encyclopedia that services all of our libraries. That is a renewal, it's annual. Moving on to number 5, Scholastic is a renewal. That is the service agreement that supports our Read 180 program, which is a reading intervention in the middle grades. It's called Read 180. When you get into high school, students that are 2 or more grade levels below reading at their grade level actually go into courses, English 1 with Lab, and in 10th grade it's English 2 with Lab. Number 6 is a Pearson product. This is our credit recovery that's used at the Student Achievement Center. I believe UPrep also uses this, so this is a credit recovery license. This has been in the district for at least 10 years. Jan would probably say more. The ProQuest, this is an online historical black newspapers. This supports your African American literature course. This is an annual renewal for students that enroll in the African American literature course, which, if the board remembers, is an alternative to the regular English 4 course. Agile Mind. Agile Mind is a mathematical support for students that take algebra A, B, B, C. Those are students that enter into the 9th grade that are not proficient in mathematics. Again, we used it last year, so this is the 2nd year, and students report that they like the interactivity that is provided. Most of the licensing ones, like Agile Mind, because it's internet-based, is available if they have, if they go to a library. Outside of school, it's 24/7 access. Moving on to item number 9, First in Math is a very popular software. I'm sorry Dr. Hawley left because I'm sure her students used it at Lincoln. But this is to practice basic mathematics skills. Kids compete against each other across the country. We've had several schools and students that end up in the top, and folks come and recognize students through whole school assemblies. So this is a significant incentive for students to really get into their mathematical practices, and they compete with each other across our district as well as across the region. You want me to keep going? Okay, 10.
10's the only one.
Number 10, the 95% group, this supports our response to intervention program for students that are Tier 2, having problems with basic phonemic awareness. So this is appropriate for students typically in K-5, and it's a Tier 2 intervention, and they use it during that 30-minute intervention time that all students participate in.
Thank you very much. That does help. Thanks for indulging me. Of those software programs, only 1 or 2 are available on the internet? You mentioned the Agile Mind is.
World Book Online is internet-based. Scholastic is a service agreement, so it provides like automatic updates. That one is not. Let me go through these really fast. Novanet is typically used only during school hours. And I'd have to check, to be honest with you, on historical black newspapers. And Agile Mind definitely is. First in Math, which is the big competitive one, that is available. Kids can do it at home, rack up points. And the 95% phonics, we typically only use that during the school day. So the majority of them actually are.
Well, that was only 3, but. Or, yeah, 3 that you mentioned. I was taking notes. Okay, thanks a lot. That helps. That's all I have for this section. Thank you, Ms. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Ms. Shealy.
So, Dr. Lippert, that was where my question about evaluation of these programs and how you determine whether these programs are worth continuing. Could you repeat your answer or give me another one?
Sure. So each one's a little bit different. World Book Online, for example, that's the library services. We look at usage and response from our district librarians. When we were actually thinking about changing it, we had significant outcry about the usage, and then we were provided with frequent usage reports. Scholastic, again, Scholastic Read 180, because it's such a large software program serving a lot of our students, that actually makes sure that as upgrades are done, instead of buying the whole new software package, we automatically get updates to the software as they occur. And then things like Novanet, we look at course completion rates and how students and teachers are interacting with the courses. Do you want me to keep going? Are you?
The one I was interested in, well, you actually addressed that part of the question for First in Math, but the other question I have for that one is, how much do students access that outside of school?
I'd have to talk to Dr. Itazan to see if we can break it down by what they're doing in school with time provided versus after school programming versus outside on their own time. I'll have to see if we can get that data based on login times or specifically the time of day they're logging in. I'll have to do some research and I'll get back to you on that one.
Thank you. That helps. I'll move to number 18, which is, a contract to help, I think, relocate technology. Is that that's what that is? There is a list of anticipated sites, and I just don't quite understand, and I don't have a full list in my head, but like, shouldn't the Rosenstein building and Peabody buildings be on this list? And Langley also, no, should Langley be on here? Well, it's a different set of technology, I would think. I wouldn't think the technology needs for a high school are the same as those for an elementary school or a K-8.
So this work is actually our attempt to level set the PC models throughout the school. If you recall, during the technology briefing, we mentioned that we would be taking a look at all of the PCs in the schools that are closing in transition and moving those PCs into the schools that are live in production. And this work supports that effort.
So if
It's
It ha-
based on the model.
It
That's-
has nothing to, or does it? This is a question. I'm gonna make a statement, but it's really a question. It has nothing to do with the need to pull our equipment or wires or cables or whatever from like a Reisenstein building.
No, not with cabling or wires. It's all about the age of the PCs. Us trying to make sure that we leverage those PCs that are usable and redeploy them in schools.
Okay, thank you. On number 19, my first question is, do we, and I'm so sorry for not, because I feel so clueless about this. Do we approve before you go out for bid?
We had advised the board, and you did approve for us to do this, to go out for
When?
bid. To go out, when you say out for bid,
Yeah,
to-
when did we approve you to go out to bid this work?
I think we advised the board, I'm not recalling if we actually had you vote that we would do this, but I think we informed the board we were doing it.
Okay, and this might be a thing in a new format. Generally, when we see bid items, we have a list of responders by the amount of their bid, and this is just
You see
the
those
answer.
you see those in the format related to a competitive purchasing bid. For bids that are related to services, we just bring you the recommendation.
Okay, and so, well, another thing, there's a typo in here. It says April 16th, 2013. You're welcome. I think you might want to correct that before we vote. But, I lost my own train of thought by looking at the typo.
It wasn't intentional, by the way. It'll cost me money for Dr. Lane.
Goes to the Pittsburgh Promise.
I've been late for meetings a couple times, and now I'm paying for typos. And Mr. Sumter, I'm funding the Promise.
So this is a flat rate amount. This is not based on their success or lack
This
thereof.
is not based on their success. This is based on we need to market these buildings in a different way. And then the cost related to this is going to be, when they are successful, we'll be recouping our costs also. So it affects,
If they're not successful,
it'll
we're
cost us
out.
money, but
Yeah.
right now we have building stock to move.
I hear you. I definitely understand that, but, let's hope they're successful in at least getting one done.
We aren't going to pay them for at least one of them. We can decide what we pay them for.
Okay, so this is not, I'm sorry, when I said this is a flat amount, we don't have to write this check. It's as we access their services.
If we have a building that has demanded already as marketing, we're probably not going to make them spend a lot of time on, but they'll help us overall. That is their fee. So that would even go in, I'm not going to pay them additional money for a building we think is going to market itself.
I think I understand, but I'm not sure I do, so I might come back to you. But, and I, sort of the same questions for number 20. Was this bid? Because that's a pretty big number, too. I guess it was bid. So, and again, we don't
That-
see,
in the
because it's
same
services.
You don't see the, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then on 21, and I actually might need Carol's help on this. Did the early childhood classrooms, we're not opening classrooms in the Peabody building?
Yes, we are.
So did we consider moving this stuff to the Peabody building?
There's not a location for it.
Oh, take down a row of bleachers. No, there's none? There's really none. So basically, those kids have no play space outdoors, is what that boils down to.
There's space, there's just not, I mean, there's outdoor space to play, but there's not a good location for the actual equipment.
Basketball courts too, but okay, I'll let it go. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Ms. Shaley. Mr. McCray? Mr. Eisler?
Yes, Mr. Camarda, would you go back to 19? Because I'm having trouble understanding this. Is this a flat fee that we are paying this company to do the services outlined? Or is this an up-to amount based on the work they do?
Their fee is going to be $10,000 a month, so it's a fee.
So this is a flat fee, no matter what they do?
Yes.
In our agreement or contract with them, if they're not moving buildings, can we discontinue at any given time?
There's a termination provision. Basically, there's a notice, which is short, but there's no need to show cause. It's a personal, basically it's a personal services type contract.
So it's within all those other guidelines?
Yes.
The reason I ask, and again, I'm not questioning the bid and I'm not questioning the company, this is not the first one of these that we have had over the last 7 or 8 years.
Well, you're right, but however, I will say that this is a comprehensive program that will involve this company's doing essentially a marketing analysis of all of our buildings, developing a marketing plan. We have never had anything like this, and clearly everything we've tried to date at best has been marginally successful. This is a very high-level professional company, and the RFP was very involved. We got 3 proposals, and this was clearly the superior one, and we're very confident that it's going to produce some results.
Again, Mr. Weiss, I am not questioning this company. I'm not questioning the bid process. I'm questioning whether or not, if people don't deliver, we have the ability to end the payment system.
Yes.
Okay, that to me is really critical. The second question I have about this is the URA involved at all in this, or are they taken out of the equation totally when it comes to the sale of buildings?
They're not out of the equation. They're not involved with this contract, but certainly if the URA can provide assistance to this company through marketing, through their contacts, this company will certainly utilize that.
Again, I don't want to get into the details here. I just know that the URA at times can be an assistant to developers when it comes to residential reuse issues, so that they can be brought in if needed.
Yes, I mean, they're a funding source and they can expedite things, and they're certainly not being excluded.
Okay. Then again, I want to go to number 20 and just pick up on this. This is an up-to amount, Mr. Camarda, not a guaranteed payment?
Not a guaranteed payment. Up
It's
to
about
amount is needed.
services used up to $100,000.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Dr. Hawley.
Just for clarification, students love FIRST in math, and they would love to play that at any time because it's so competitive. I want to talk a little bit about number 21 because I'm very concerned that that's the only Head Start or Early Childhood Center that won't have a play area. There's really no place to put a play area now that I'm thinking of it around the school, unless you want to. Do we own the basketball court that's in front of the? Do we own that?
I think it's all part of our footprint.
It's all part of our. We really do need to have a play site though over there but is there a way that we can utilize the seminaries? They have a wonderful little playground area which the children can walk to, that's within walking distance for little people. If we are allowed to use that, how do we go about doing that?
I think that we can reach out to the seminary and just see. I suggest we go over and look at it first and then see if we can get kids safely across North Highland Avenue and over there. But we can certainly, I know a couple people there that I could probably talk to find out who we would speak with in that regard. Are you suggesting you might be willing to give up a basketball court?
Not and live in Highland Park, I'm not. Nope. But I'm just trying to think of, some way that they can have some outside activity. And thinking that there is a little parklet that the seminary has. I don't know who actually uses that. I never see any children out there, but they do have a little parklet out there. And if we could possibly contact somebody to use that. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mrs. Fink.
Nothing against the company in number 19, but I do that for free, and I'm successful, as you will see a couple items later.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. Mrs. Khaleesi. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, I have for number 19, I'm going to mention I do have some concerns. This process has been a questionable process over the years. We've tried the district, and then we've tried the relationship with the URA, and nobody knew who was in charge when we received offers. The case that I remember is a young entrepreneur, African-American, money in hand, made offer on the old Miller. After we found out he was an African-American business person and came forward, we then flipped the script and changed the rules. He did not receive the building. We held off, gave it to someone else who gave us a couple $1,000s down, strung it out for a year, and we ended up selling it for less for what the original offer was from the African-American candidate. This process concerns me. I am hoping that we would add into it a couple of things in the agreement. Number one, the first marketing step that they would do is to meet with every neighborhood community development corporation to remind them individually of the buildings that we have that are empty in the city and in their district, and see if there's any interest there first. Secondly, that any offer submitted that is signed and executed with hand money, that no company nor this firm or individual in this district has the right to withhold that. Every offer must come before the board to give this board the right to vote it up or to vote it down. As you know, we also had a situation 4 or 5 years ago, offer money in hand pretty much for the purchase of Bergwin. And at that time, the leadership of this board decided not to even present the offer. Some of us, including myself, had to read about the offer in the newspaper. $350,000 for the building we could have sold, we could have had it, but someone decided not to present it. It's in the Tribune Review for those who aren't familiar with it. So I want to make sure that we, other than final things that we include in the packet that goes out, and Mr. Weiss, I think I've shared this many times, but I hope it is in writing, that anyone interested in purchasing our building, or they are required to have a community benefits meeting in the community where the building is to share what their plans are for the community. Number of jobs, proposed use for the building, development, and what they're going to do for the maintenance and the surrounding of the building, et cetera. It must get community support or hopefully some feedback from the community. So I am hoping that those things would be included, and that's something can we include in those agreements, Mr. Weiss, for this company to follow?
I believe much of what you said was in the RFP, and we will incorporate these items into the agreement.
Okay, thank you very much. And we will especially emphasize, you know, I think we need to see a clear chart on how things operate. For instance, the role and responsibility of this company is to do nothing more but marketing. If somehow that they receive an offer, here's how it's spelled out what they are to do. They are to immediately forward it to the district. The administration is to immediately bring it before the board. If it's a building, if someone's offering $10 for it, if it's in writing, and if there's a hand money with it, then submit it. We have to vote it down. up or down. So I'm hoping that there's something that spells out clearly the role of each different group, because now this is the third layer. It is the administration and is the board, and then it's the Fourth River Development Company, LLC. So at least we kind of know, who has the right to listen to offers. So please, and if you can point that out, will you have the contract for us next week before we vote?
We will not have the contract until after this board votes. Fundamentally, this company is going to market buildings. It is something that this district does not have the capacity to do, either personnel-wise or expertise-wise. The last several years have taught us that, and there will be safeguards, so the board ultimately decides what buildings are sold and how much they're sold for. Buildings aren't sold by anybody but this U9 folks. So it'll be a transparent process, and I believe that there will be some success here in getting some of these buildings sold by a company that's in that business. So we will incorporate your comments into the contract. The contract will be done after the board takes action.
Okay. The number 20, construction management, that is the first, or that's the only company that we're using, or there's only one construction management we'll be using?
No, we have a host of construction management companies the board has approved. We work with the various ones you've approved based on what we have to have done.
Okay. Now, has this company, have they been doing business in the district in the past, or even presently?
I'll have to look in to see what they've done with us in the past.
Okay. If so, that would present, I hope that would present some kind of conflict there in terms of having them being a construction manager at the same time having a contract.
I don't think they've constructed anything. As far as you mean,
as far as providing
construction company. No, if they did anything, they would have been
right.
Been
provided any work.
It would have been this type of role.
Okay, but that's also a construction company too. They do work as well, other than management the site, right?
I don't think we've ever had Massaro be a construction company for us. I'll verify that.
Okay, okay. And you say we have a lot of them, or we have quite a few of them?
We'll actually give a summary of all the contracts you have authorized this year.
Okay. What's the process of Ms. Castleberry's office when we do these kinds of contracts? Is her office involved, or do we seek bids?
Her office is advised and involved, and it's been great that she's in the same physical plant that the facilities operation is, and I believe that she would have been consulted with related to this activity.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. The next section is number 24, the blue. It's. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Sumter.
I just wanted a question on item number 22 and 23 as to why we're leasing space and don't we have space?
I asked that same question at agenda review, and I think I remember the answer. These are specialized spaces. These are actual homes. So students get the practice of learning how to, the various skills of working in an actual house. It's not like an office.
Very good, thank you much. And just the general comment, the administration should take direction from the board as a whole, not individual board members. And if that's the case, Mr. Weiss, you may want to poll all board members to see what language we want to have in the contracts individually, or if we can just generally give direction to you and you follow suit. No big deal.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. The next section is payments authorized. There's number 24, which is blue. Following that is general authorizations, which is number 25 through 31 in the yellow. So to save time, I would like to combine them and say we are going to go through numbers 24 through 31, the blue and the yellow. Mr. Sumter, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Ms. Shealy.
Mr. Camarda, number 25, that means that approval of number 25, the
That's
Ridge
a-
bonds will be closed.
That's yes, correct.
And the rest of it will go towards other bond issues.
Correct.
Number 29, could you give me the Cliff Notes version? There's a number, $19,300. What does that number represent?
That's the amount that offsets someone's tax on the taxable property. So if someone has a $100,000 property, it reduces by that $19,000 number, and they pay tax on that lower dollar amount.
So what if I have a $16,000 property?
You can only get the credit up to the $16,000. That's part of the, that's the part of the calculation I give Mr. Joseph all the credit in the world to, because we have to actually work with the tax tape to go through individual properties till we're at that point where all the properties come out to not getting any more credit than what their property value is, then arrive at that $19,000 amount per property, and no one can get more than that. It's a big calculation.
I can imagine. So you're saying he's already done the calculation to derive that 19.3?
He's done the calculation based on the tax file for 2012. When we get through as we described, we're in a situation again this year with the 2013 tax file. We will look to see how that works out, and if we have to bring back an amendment in December, we would bring back an amendment in December. We have to pass this now at this time.
So, I'm sorry, but one more, just so I'm sure I understand. So like, in that example, that 19.3 is everybody's value, and someone has a piece of property that's less than that, 16.
They would only get credit for
16.
You can't get a refund.
So does he?
You can't get a credit. You can't get
Yeah.
money back from this.
But is his iterative calculation put that $3,000 back into the pot?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
That's what takes the time through the exercise.
okay. No, it was enough time when you said individual properties in the city of Pittsburgh. Yeah, okay, thank you. And then under number 30, the Act 1 resolution, just again, Cliff Notes, is that there will be no tax increase from this taxing body.
At this point, the legislation requires the board to take an action to say it would not increase taxes beyond the index. You, the board, have to decide what you're going to do in December.
And because of our fiscal year challenge, compared to the state budget, our fiscal years are different. This not raising to the index is for
2013.
fiscal year, our calendar year 2013, which is our fiscal year.
Other school districts had to take this action 6 months ago.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. Mr. McCray.
I'm not sure, are you done? Oh, okay. Wasn't sure she was done. I want to go a little further on number 30. If we wanted to raise the taxes beyond the index, there's a process for that, correct?
The process would, yes, the process would be right now, you'd be saying you want to do that, and you'd be on a timeline of,
Exactly.
and you'd be it would put it into a referendum, and you'd be adopting your budget in August, and you'd be out for the voters to decide, yes, you could or couldn't. Plus, I think you have to, I'll stop.
Okay. Well, basically, this basically sets up that timeline. And by authorizing this now, we are not going to go through that process, is what we're saying.
That's correct.
Okay. And if we did increase the index, we would get approximately $3 million or so?
It's about 3.4 million, yes.
Do you have any idea how much the difference, our savings would have been if we would have gone and changed our start times on the transportation versus how much we would have to?
What we had projected our savings from the 7-Eleven start was about $1.2 million.
Okay, I'm just kind of doing the math in my head. But, yeah, I think that was all I had. Yeah, oh, the homestead exemption, we worked long and hard to get the homestead exemption, so, and don't let him go to the county and do tax assessment, keep him here. Thank you.
But they'd be done well.
They'd be done right, yes.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Mr. Eisler.
I want to clarify a few things here to not leave any confusion with the public, because I do think that some of the things just said could be confused. We do not assess property. Let's be really clear about it, ladies and gentlemen. We do not assess. It's a service provided by the county by law, correct, Mr.?
That's correct.
If we can go to 25, and again, I know Ms. Shealy asked a question, but the way this is broken out, is it because of a sale to a nonprofit, Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
But all the funds still go to debt, correct?
Yes.
To pay
Yes.
down debt service, correct?
Yes.
So it just, you have to do this by IRS regulations, but it does not change any way we utilize funds from the sale of building. It still goes to debt service, right?
Correct.
Thank you. In terms of the homestead exemption, what was a homestead exemption this past year?
It's very close to that same dollar amount.
Okay,
The
so it's,
proceeds from the gaming revenues were almost equal to what they were last year.
okay, so it's basically the same, correct? And again, so that the public understands, we do not have any intention, because once we pass this resolution, we cannot do anything but we cannot go against the index. We are not raising taxes, correct, above the index.
Correct.
We still reserve the right to go to the index.
Correct.
But as of right now, when this is passed, it is off the table for the year 2013.
Beyond the index.
You go beyond the index. I
Yes,
want to be
that's right.
clear about that.
That's right.
Okay. There is another action that we have to take at the end of this year when we adopt budgets. But it is only the index amount, which is I mean, I'm not proposing that we even get into the discussion, but I just want to be clear, we are closing down our options whenever we pass this, which I favor, by the way. Correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. Dr. Hawley?
Fine.
Mrs. Fink? Mr. Brentley?
Question on number, the last page. This is for the release from the Guttner Construction Company for the CAPA, some terms and conditions accepted. Do we have that? What is it?
Mr. President, this is potential litigation, which was reviewed in executive session, which is an appropriate place to do that. I mean, in brief, this is a claim that arose out of the work at CAPA in 2009-10. The company was directed to do work by facilities personnel. Those directives were verified. The monies have not been paid. And I've advised the board that it is in the district's best interest to resolve this. I would prefer to discuss with you
I didn't
offline the details.
So we'll have the details next week?
Yes.
For a vote. Okay. It was just blank here, so I didn't.
That's why. But the
Okay.
board,
I didn't
the
hear
board
that.
was provided with detail, and I'll provide you with that detail.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Can I want to make a quick.
Go ahead.
We're finished?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, she said we was.
What didn't I do? Oh, thank you.
Well, we finished.
Okay. What items do we want to pull from the Education Committee? Which numbers? Since I didn't do that at the end, take a minute to go ahead and look through it.
In the Education Committee report, item 10, 47, and 46, and item 19 in the business.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Ms. Shealy?
In business, with hopes that we can address the early childhood space issue.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. Mr. McCray?
Nothing.
Mr. Eisler?
Once I get all my questions answered, none, thank you.
Dr. Hawley?
Yes, Number 13. In education. And that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hawley.
Sorry.
Mrs. Fink? Mrs. Fink, okay. Mr. Brentley?
Reserve the right to pull all items if necessary. for the
Okay, thank you
education.
for your cooperation, Mr. Brentley. What was your final question you had?
I have a couple of notes. I just wanted to let my colleagues know that next week, not necessarily required, but I am sharing under new business. I'll be introducing some items that require a vote, and I just want to give board members a heads up now. Number one, I'll be putting a motion on the floor to set or establish 2.5 as a grade point GPA for all of our students participating, so it would mirror the qualifications for the Pittsburgh Promise. Number two, I'll be introducing a motion to remove Pittsburgh from in front of all of our schools. Number three, I'll introduce a resolution to support a letter of a position letter for the Pittsburgh Public Schools in support of Kennywood Park staying an alcohol-free park facility with a family atmosphere. And then the final item will be a resolution for restoration of a court stenographer services at our education committee meetings. Just today, I think there were references to at least 3 or 4 times to our education committee, but we do not have a reporter, so there is no real transcripts or documentation of that meeting. And so I'll be making a motion that we add that service back to that meeting so that the public would at least have access to those transcripts if necessary.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll send you something over the weekend.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. Thank you. So
Well,
we'll-
we want to be little one-liners, except the one item to be the letter.
all righty.
Good.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Brentley. Ms. Shealy?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Azuda, but if we could ask, and to Mr. Sumter's point, this is not, I would like to pull the board, maybe. If we could have Mrs. Wenger send us the items that were pulled, a list of the items that were pulled before, when we get our legislative packets, have those items identified specifically.
It'll be in your Friday update. That's what we've been doing the last 2 months. So you'll have, you want it with the packet as well?
I actually would prefer it with the packet
All right.
instead of in the
All
update.
right, sure. Good suggestion. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. I have a sort of a request. When we're referring to the McKnocker School in the Oliver Building, could we say that for the next couple of months until people get used to McKnocker being in the Oliver Building? Because there was some confusion tonight about that. Maybe that would help alleviate that confusion.
We can certainly try to remember to reference that so that until we get our heads wrapped around the fact that we have a change.
And also, and this is going way forward, the 11th graders from both Langley and Oliver, will they be able to have on their diploma that they were at Langley as opposed to Brashear and Oliver's, if they choose? Can you look into doing that possibly? I just research.
I'll just say this. I know that Westinghouse had the students wearing their Peabody collars for commencement, which was very nice. I don't know if we can actually issue a diploma from a school that
Doesn't
isn't
exist.
open. So we'll have to check that out. I don't want to say yes and then find out we've issued an invalid diploma to our students. So we'll find out.
Whatever works.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.